What the truck?
You are listening to What the Truck.
Welcome, everybody, to your Friday afternoon edition of What the Truck. I'm Kaylee Nix. We're here with Thomas Wasson. Thomas, Friday, end of the week, busy week, long week after a short week last week, and the long weeks after the short weeks always feel longer, right?
It feels that way. Literally, you get back in, you're like, well, I'm really glad I had a 4-day week. And then you come back and you're like, crap, I got to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have you here on the desk with me. We're continuing to dive into our freight safety conversation today. We've got a great guest on the way and lots more to talk about when it comes to all things carriers and fraud and really just the conversation that's kind of taken the industry by storm.
Yeah, no, I think one of the greatest things we're hearing is just a lot of talk about not only fraud, but safety. And so I came from a Samsara event. Companies are trying to utilize safety for driver safety within fleets, but there's a lot of unsafe folks on the road. And so there's definitely in the past few months, it feels like a wellspring of attention to the matter. We've got, citizen reporting, on the ground investigative journalism. It's what a time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just get right into it. Well, we're going to get into our headlines for the day, and we're not talking necessarily about freight fraud via headlines today, but we've actually got some good news to talk about. So, I'm happy to bring this one to you. Let's run that headline. There we go. All right, Thomas. We got new news from Truck Parking Club and an exciting partnership. A strategic investment is what they're calling it. Truck Parking Club partnering with Cat Scales, and now they are going to have the ability to have parking at these way stations, and we've got this now strategic investment there.
I mean, that's a great thing. It's great to see him join it. Truck Parking Club is a parking aggregator. It helps pair people who have locations with parking spots. So Cat Scales is big. You got to go by a scale house. A lot of times you pick up a load, you need to get your scale ticket. You got to send it to someone, and a lot of times it's a Cat Scale. So it's really great to see the investment, especially in the parking space. One of the biggest challenges is it's like chicken or the egg. What do you get? Do you either build more parking or do you try to utilize more of what's existing? So, big shout out to the folks. Congratulations at Truck Parking Club. If you think of Cat Scales, the article mentions there's 2,275 way stations between the U.S. and Canada. So when we're talking about this news about the expansion, that's what makes it such a big deal. That's opening up a big old opportunity.
Yeah, and I love particularly the statement from Cat that said, this problem is a problem across the industry, but Truck Parking Club is a solution that exists today, which is why they were so eager to enter this strategic investment. So congrats to Evan Shelley and the team over at Truck Parking Club. We love to see the work that you guys are doing. Keep doing that good work, and congrats on the investment.
Oh, yeah, definitely. If you ever get to check out the interview I did with Reed as well on one of my podcasts. Yeah, I'm plugging it. That's right. Loaded and rolling on What the Truck. It's happening, the crossover. But he has a great story. He talks about Evan Shelley as well and how when he started out the company, it was such a grind. It took a lot of effort to get it going. But now we're starting to see the dividends and forward looking. There's keep an eye on them. There's nowhere to go but up. And it seems like they're on a rocket.
You started quite the conversation with Reed's interview, by the way. Is it acceptable to wear shorts on air? That was the question that everybody asked. Like, you can't tell what we're wearing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm in my little professional skirt. Thomas got his fisherman shirt on. But, like, everybody asked the question, is it professional to wear shorts on air? My vote's yes. Like, who cares what you wear?
It was a smart play because he wore the hat. And I remember during the interview, the hardest thing, so you see the lighting on us right now, those of you listening on Sirius, the hardest thing is getting lighting under a hat. And so I was like, oh crap, they're going to give us a hard time over the lighting. And it was in fact, this is the shorts of all things. So you know what? It turns out, at least on my podcast, shorts, shoes, service, doesn't matter. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. At least everyone is still fully clothed on my show. So until that day comes, shorts are definitely acceptable.
There we go. There's no dress code here on the What the Truck set. That's for dang sure. All right, let's move on to some unfortunately not so good news from FedEx. FedEx to terminate nearly 500 jobs and close 2 facilities to coincide with its strategy for consolidating its logistics network. FedEx plans to get rid of more than 480 workers as it moves towards its huge network consolidation program, closing package distribution stations in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Omaha, Nebraska. And it's not new news for FedEx because this is part of their overall strategy for cost savings and for network optimization. And there's been some estimations that part of these costs are expected to help bring down about $2 billion in total costs this year.
Wow. And when you think about it, put it in a larger context. FedEx does a lot of parcel. They did some LTL stuff. When you're looking in that kind of space, speed is king. So what they probably happened was if you identify a few facilities that are slowing down operations, and there's a lot of competition from Amazon. Amazon is one of the big elephants in the room, and so what we're seeing with these shutdowns is think of them as part of a larger thing where there are fundamental shifts happening in the space. It used to be FedEx and UPS, and then the post office kind of hung out. Now it's FedEx, UPS, USPS, and DHL. There's a few others. So I would say like expect to see more of this. We saw even with the post office they were doing streamlining their own parcel service, trying to shut down locations. So, when we see the headlines, you're thinking, oh crap, this must be, it's part of a wider range. And you got to imagine as well, we had that huge boom in COVID. Everyone did shipping objects. There are fewer items being shipped. And so now we're continuing to see in this still recessionary environment, we are making some tweaks. And unfortunately, when you make tweaks, it does have a human cost. So it's never fun reporting on it, but sometimes giving it a better context doesn't make the pill easier to swallow, but at the end of the day, we hope that they can get everything back on track and, keep rolling.
And, so far FedEx has cut over $4 billion since this program started back in mid-2023. So now about 2 years worth of cost cuts, $4 billion and another anticipated close to 2 expected. So we'll continue to see a little bit about what this ends up taking off. All right, we're going to move on to talking a little bit about you, where you've been in the last couple weeks, because we were playing Where in the World is Thomas Wasson. But first off, we got to say thank you to our sponsor. So let's shout out TruckStop. If you're ready to move more freight, make more money, and manage your freight business with speed and confidence, look to truckstop.com for tools that transform the way you move freight. You can learn more at truckstop.com. Go over there and visit them and give them a follow. Thomas, did you visit truckstop.com?
Not yet. Put it on the list. Truckstop. You got call me. I know a few of you.
But, there you go. They've got a beautiful commercial for us. So let's roll that for them.
Spend less time searching and more time hauling loads with the TruckStop Load Board. Find the right load at the right time to put more money in your pocket. Learn more today.
There we go, truckstop.com. It's the easiest place to go. And check out that snazzy new logo they're rocking down there in that bottom right-hand corner. We love to see a little bit of a turnaround from what's going on there from a leadership perspective. So anyways, Thomas, so where in the world has Thomas Wasson been? You have been quite the world traveler, the North American traveler. Talk to us a little bit about your trips.
Well, it all just kind of coincided. So the first one was at a Samsara event. I was in San Diego about 3 weeks ago now.
Talking fraud, which is, again, very pertinent to our discussion today.
Yeah, completely. One of the big things that telematics companies are trying to fight is fuel fraud as well. And then cargo security. I got to go visit Mexcal Trucking. Shout out to the folks at Mexcal. I'm going to have to visit you all eventually. It is on my list, but we got to go see their operations in San Diego. They move freight in and out of that area, including Tijuana. Oh, that's one of the cool bus ones. I'll switch over to that as well. That's the Thomas Bus Factory. No, throw it back up there. Kick it back up there real quick. Okay, so those of you watching this is, if you're listening, this is like a giant Roomba that is approximately 20 feet long, and it is moving across. They use them to move bus chassis, and it's got little LiDAR arrays and stuff. So I'll kick it from my most recent one. So this is the Thomas Bus Factory, and I'll go back to Samsara. At the bus factory located in High Point, North Carolina, they produce school buses from start to finish. Here's some bus facts brought to you by Thomas Wasson. It takes a day and a half to create a school bus. If you're noticing in this video, buses sometimes have white tops or black tops. The black tops are for school districts in the northern areas. And so if it gets, you have a temperature difference of either 9 degrees hotter with a black top or 9 degrees cooler with a lighter colored white top. And that is there to help because unfortunately, school buses still don't have air conditioning. Yes, you're right.
Or seatbelts.
They are working on it, but it is up to the school district. Somebody on social media commented saying that, it's horrible. All of them need seatbelts. It is up to the school district who buys them. Unfortunately, tax dollars don't go as far as they used to be, so we still don't have seatbelts.
So we choose to skimp on seatbelts for tax dollars?
Well, also they're 35,000 pounds, and the apparently NISTA or one of the government agencies, they did some tests and they figured, does it make a difference with a seatbelt or not? And unless you're getting hit by a very large object, the natural predator of the school bus, of course, is either another school bus, an 18-wheeler, or a train. Most cars, you see how high off of the ground. Kick the picture back with the stripes, because someone on social media told me about the stripes. The stripes show you the positioning of the base and then where the seats are located. There's some kind of,
Okay.
yeah. So if you're thinking how high off of the ground, it takes a lot. And so, according to the regulators, you don't really have to. And there is a scientific reason the seats are as small as they are and they have the cushions, because apparently it's not called like a safety cage, but there is a safety buffer where you kind of bounce around, but you should be okay. That doesn't mean, don't call me up later, listeners, and say, Thomas, this one school bus didn't make it. I don't make the rules. I'm just reporting what I learned. These are bus facts. Final ones with bus facts. So it takes a day and a half to make a bus. As they make them, they're all highly customizable. There is some automation. So when we're thinking of the rails and the frames of the bus, we do get that. But the seats and everything are still installed by hand. So there's between 1,100 and 1,700 workers in that plant in High Point, North Carolina.
Wow.
It is a union shop. They are really cool people. Everyone waved at me. Being in the media, you never get waved at a lot, so it was super nice. But that was the bus tour. I can also dive in later about the Daimler Investor Conference, which was the larger event.
Well, first, before we do that, just thank you to those workers that are there in that factory in Highland, North Carolina, because their success protects kids, and being able to build buses correctly protects kids.
They are safety focused. It is remarkable. It is multi-generational at that plant. There was one instance I spoke where a mother, her daughter, and her son all work in different areas. The coolest thing about American manufacturing that you don't know is at these plants, the average tenure at the bus factory is between 11 and 15 years.
Wow.
The average tenure at the Daimler plant that did the Cascadia was 15 plus. OEMs are fascinating. Every individual I talked with, and I've even spoken with PACCAR, every person, they start by saying, I've been here 20, 25, 30 years. And so it is amazing. All the manufacturers, especially, shout out to the folks at Daimler, shout out to Thomas Bus, shout out to the union shops that are working at this German company. They have union shops in each one. I've never seen a more motivated group of people. They believe in their mission, and, go big yellow. Final thoughts as well on the bus. Each of them have 3 different shades of yellow. There's not a federally mandated color for yellow. In the 1930s, when they first built the buses, they all just said paint them yellow. And so they have 3 different shades. So each of the big 3 companies, Bluebird, ICC, and Thomas, have different shades of yellow. And then finally, I was talking with Germans because the German media delegation was there. Did you know in Germany, they don't have yellow school buses? They have private buses. They don't even have like real buses. And so they were like, yeah, this is remarkable. Like in America, we just have public funded school buses. And then finally, there's companies that help out owner operators. You have a smaller percentages of owner operator school bus drivers. And so these buses are built to last. They can last anywhere between 10, 15, or 20 years. And so when you're asking, well, what happens when you sell them? Imagine you have 15 school buses and they last 15 years. Well, every year you're going to buy a bus. And so there is a steady demand. For all the people claiming that falling birth rates in the world is about to end, I did ask them about that. They said they are not worried. They expect a continuation of people having children. So don't worry, the school bus is not going extinct, nor is humanity.
Well, and when you sell a school bus, it ends up turning into somebody's camper van that they renovate, and then it goes down the line. But I love it. That's such a cool trip. And you mentioned the Daimler Investor Conference. Let's talk about that really quickly because it came with some cool ride-along opportunities. You didn't get to drive a school bus, but you got to at least sit in some of these cool trucks. And Daimler, of course, makes our big 18-wheelers that we're used to, but they also have a different set of heavy-duty and medium-duty trucks as well. The dump truck is cool, the tanker truck, and then there's a cool, is it a tank
It's
truck?
a military cargo
cargo
van.
van.
I think
There
it's
you
the Opel brand. Mercedes makes defense stuff. You'll see them in Canada, parts of Europe, parts of Germany. European countries will use them. You can see that one has a snorkel on it. If you're looking at it, listeners, imagine the Jurassic Park movie, the big green looking things that were catching dinosaurs. That's probably the same Mercedes they're using. These are rugged built vehicles. These are in the medium duty space, so they're super fascinating. I did get to drive the dump truck. So Daimler has expanded. Class 8s, Freightliner Cascadias, they also have Western Star. And so in the Class 8 vocational space, which is your construction work, that's one of their areas of growth. The Western Star brand recently had a revamp in 2025. They are big. If you drive a dump truck, there are 6,000 possible combinations for that dump truck, and it's super fun. If you wonder why when you ride in one that it's empty and it's a really rough ride, they are meant to be driven loaded. So the only time it's comfortable is if it's hauling something. And I did drive a school bus and I pulled a Yui in the lot. They said that I missed a trailer by about 6 inches, but the guy told me to do it. That was the head of product who made the buses. He said they have to be able to turn around in cul-de-sacs. And so buses have a surprisingly good turnover ratio. Final thoughts. Let me just gloss over Daimler because I know I'm talking everyone's ears off. Daimler, overall big trends. Freightliner Cascadia, 42% of the market share, so a little under half of all trucks on the road are from that Freightliner brand, part of the larger Daimler North American subsidiary. They're looking to grow, expect stable. Electric trucks are in Europe now, so they're looking for the EV growth in Europe. Autonomy is another fun fact, 15 to 20% savings by 2030. They think it's going to be an option. And finally, China. So they're making deals. Cats and dogs are becoming friends. Volvo and Daimler made Cortura, which is a technology joint partnership. Continue to expect European companies. When I spoke with the CTO as well, the goal is like, look, if it's too much work to build it, we're going to partner with somebody. We're going to spread the love because right now, unfortunately, China has a lot of EVs and a lot of vehicles with not a lot of places to go. And so the European market is a little concerned about it. But overall, the outlook is interesting. They have a very aggressive restructuring. Unfortunately, you mentioned those FedEx cuts. There's going to be approximately 5,000 job cuts in Germany for the Mercedes-Benz part alone. So everyone right now is trying to get lean. And unfortunately, just like when you're fasting before Thanksgiving, there is a little pain involved.
There you go. And I got to say, I like the Mercedes truck the best out of all of those, but I wouldn't put myself behind one of the wheel of them, unfortunately. I'll stick to my little Ford Escape. That's it. That's all I need. All right, Thomas, I love it. I'm glad that you're back with us here in town. We got a couple big weeks coming up from the FreightWaves space, and we're going to continue to chug along forward. We're going to go ahead and bring in our guest. We've got Dale Prax joining us, who is the CEO of FreightValidate. Dale, thank you for being here because it's a conversation that we've talked about a lot on this show, overall in the FreightWaves ecosystem. The fraud across the industry is very much the forefront of everybody's conversation right now. You guys at FreightValidate have kind of a frontline defense for the company side of things. Talk to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me down. I just love this show, and I love being down here in Chattanooga. At FreightValidate, I've been a broker and a motor carrier and owner-operator, the whole spectrum for the last 32 years. And when I was going to retire about 2 years ago, I saw the fraud was just massive. And, I was a victim of a lot of that, as a broker and as a motor carrier. So I thought that maybe we'd do something a little bit different than some of the other platforms are doing. So our platform is like based on objective facts. Are you in violation of a state or federal law? I mean, if we use that as a baseline, then we can go on to other subjective data, how many inspections you've had, how long you've been in business, all those kind of things. But we have to start at a baseline. Are you in violation of a state or federal law? And we tell people all the time, we don't validate or invalidate anyone. It's a choice you made on your application for operating authority or a choice you made in operating your business. We just report to the world how you're acting in the choices you made.
And there's a lot. I mean, it's important to report because as recent news has come out, it appears there is a bunch of unsafe motor carriers and there's a bunch of ways they're trying to get around. Talk a little bit about some of the ways that, in your experiences, we had some recent headlines over accidents as well, driver safety, carrier safety. Give us the rundown. What's been some of your thoughts we've been experiencing?
Well, one of the things is that carriers are buying and selling MC numbers like never before. And that's probably stemmed to a lot of the fraud fighting that we're doing by saying, some brokers say we don't do business with anybody that's not been in business for more than 6 months or so. So the bad guy says, well, to get around that, I'll just buy somebody's MC number and I'll be moving freight tonight. Where the good guy, and the analogy I always use is that I could work at Yellow Freight for 30 years, have 3 million miles under my belt, be the best driver in the world, and I lose my job through no fault of my own. I want to go buy a truck and go into business for myself. Well, now the guy can't work for 6 months? That's just insane to me. I think that we need to do a better job of vetting out. We have to do a better job of going after the bad guy and still protecting the good guy. And that's where we've kind of missed out a little bit.
So we had a really good article that was published as contributed content here on FreightWaves earlier this week that talked a little bit about fraud classification, and it made a very good point, is that fraud is a word that is kind of ubiquitous with any type of negative behavior in the industry right now, whether that's double brokering, whether that's genuine identity theft, whether that's selling MC numbers, whether that is operating as an illegitimate carrier. All of that is being classified as this big bucket fraud. So we're seeing different platforms arise to fight it in different forms, right? Highway comes up as a form of double brokering protection. You've got places like CarrierSure that are, carrier vetting. You've got places like FreightValidate that, as you mentioned, don't validate or invalidate folks. They just tell you, hey, these people are breaking the law.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about the importance of finding the correct classification and maybe moving to a system that's a little bit more robust in catching all of these buckets? Because right now it is really fragmented, and you might be dealing with a carrier who is, has a fraudulent MC number, has a stolen MC number, but is also at the same time double brokering your loads. And unless you're active on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different platforms, how do you know?
Yeah, that's a $64,000 question.
That's it? That's all that's worth?
Well more than that, $4 billion question. The real problem is that a lot of fraud fighters fight the problem. And what we have forgotten to do is fight the root of the problem. What's causing that to happen? And there are really about 8 things that the FMCSA could do better so we don't have to have all this vetting. There are laws in place that have been around for 10, 12, 15 years, such as a virtual office address. It's illegal to have a principal place of business that's a virtual office, a post office box, those kind of things. Being affiliated with other FMCSA regulated entities, that's not illegal, but non-disclosure or denial of that affiliation is illegal. So all those are regulations that have been around for a long time. One that drives me crazy is, President Obama signed a law back in 2012, MAP 21, Public Law 112-141, that says a broker must have experience or education to become a broker, to apply for his authority. That law's been around for 15 years, and no one has, TIA is pushing it to try and get the Congress to do something about it, but these laws are all in place now. And it's kind of, funny, but ironic that there was a big accident in Terrell, Texas, a couple Saturdays ago. And the first thing that happened on social media, the mainstream media, hey, who's that company affiliated with? Are they working out of a virtual office? All those kind of things. And we found out that they were affiliated with other companies, did not disclose that. We found out that they were working out of a virtual office in Spokane, Washington. The problem is they were before the accident happened. Why didn't somebody take care of that? Look at this, and why aren't we vetting better than we're vetting now? I don't think that it's the job of the industry to be the detectives to see if somebody's fit to operate or fit to use. That's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's job. That's what we pay them to do. So I just think that we're doing their job, but that has to change. The FMCSA, I've been called their worst critic, and I probably am, but I'm also the best friend when they do things right. And we got to get them to do things right.
Thomas, you raised a good point with us before we came on the show about the FAA having, 4,400?
45,000 employees at the FAA. The FMCSA has under 1,100 employees, and within that, sister companies of the overall DOT.
There are more employees at the bus company.
Yeah. Put that in perspective. There's more employees and probably more oversight for those individual safety pieces. And you've got to think about it in that lens, right? You have people who are paying so much attention to every lug nut and every piece of foam that are going into the safety cages of these buses, right? Why does that enforcement not translate across to a government entity into the road? So the $1 million question, the $4 billion question is it just a simple amount of the folks in government don't care? Or is it that the folks in the government are unaware of the problem, or they're aware of it and they just think it's the 2 billion pound elephant and we can't tackle it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about that we don't have the resources to do it. 1,100 people, we don't have resources to do it. But I know there are industry people that have said, we'll help you. We'll do some work for you. We can give you these lists of bad places that are virtual office locations, like 3377 California Avenue in Signal Hill, California, a 1,300 to 1,400 square foot building that houses 376 active MC numbers or DOT numbers at that office.
And
There's
not a
something
single
wrong
truck
with
there.
And 250 of those companies have the same email address, WTF-FMCSA@AOL.com. It's in the FMCSA's records. They can see that. So that's an issue. And we could maybe talk about what Congress has been trying to do about it. Back in May of 2023, 6 U.S. senators and members of Congress wrote a letter to, his name was Eric Soskins, he was the OIG at that time, Office of Inspector General, and said, we have an issue. There are 3,500 cases that we know of currently that are schemes and double brokering, all those kind of things. We want you to look into this. That same letter mentioned that we need to develop a freight fraud task force, a permanent freight fraud task force to tackle these issues. In August, the OIG wrote back and said, well, we've looked into this and we've studied about 35 cases of double brokering or fraud within the household goods community. Well, that's 1% of what we do.
That's not what we're talking about.
And in that same letter that came back from the OIG said, over the last 5 years, we've investigated 13 cases and found some nefarious activity. 13, we did that yesterday.
Yeah, we'll find
But
13
5
cases
years
in an
ago,
hour.
I only found 5. So, and we talk about that household goods issue with it. I think that TIA is doing a really good job of getting, Congress has introduced a bill. They introduced it last year in Congress. Senator Norton from Washington, D.C. introduced a bill to start fighting things with fraud, double brokering, giving the authority back to the agency to impose civil penalties, which was taken away by an administrative law judge in 2019. So it's doing a lot of good things. The problem with that is it keys again on household goods. And I don't know if you have the clip of the Federal Register in 2013, August 23rd, 2013. The Federal Register came out and talked about giving $360 million to the FMCSA to revamp the registration system. Yeah. In that Federal Register on page 29, it says that the FMCSA has the authority to vet all motor carriers before they get their authority. But a lot of people don't look at the small print. On page 29, footnote 68 says,
boom.
While the FMCSA has the authority to vet all motor carriers, it is currently only vetting household goods and passenger carriers.
We're back to buses.
It's always been the motor coaches. That's why I talked about buses. It's full circle. There are like 73. Apparently, the school bus people told me that there's 50 to 73 specific FMCSA guidelines for a school bus. But at the same time, we have trucking has been kind of like really the redheaded stepchild. Motor coaches, school buses, and other types of transportation. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this. Is this something, because we've had these regs in for decades, is this a post-COVID, all the fraudsters are like, I can make all this money because of the boom? Or is this a steadily thing like a frog boiling in a pot, and now we're hearing the ribbon?
No, I think there's a couple things that happened during COVID. One is we started offshoring a lot of our work overseas because people at home didn't have to work. The government's paying you a lot of money to sit at home, play video games and watch Scooby-Doo. So we had to hire people from overseas, Eastern Europe, Philippines, Colombia, all these places, just to keep up with the demand. It was a busy time. Yeah. So those people over there were making really pretty good money. I mean, in Colombia, for instance, I think the average wage is $700 a month. Wow. So when you're paying them maybe $1,000 a month, and these third world countries that were doing this work, they're really hard workers. Some of these learned the skills very well, and some were even better brokers than I was after 32 years. They're really good at what they do. We started coming back to work, bringing our people back to work because the government was shutting off the hose of money. These guys started losing their jobs over there. They're used to making some money. But now they realize that they can get with a stolen Visa card, they can get authority. They can get a BOC3 authority for $39. They can get insurance from somebody, and they're in business, right? That exploded. The other thing is, I'm not really positive that fraud grew a lot during that period. I think that people like me, Highway, Carrier, Carrier 411, all those companies started really exposing the fraud, so we learned how bad it really was. The other thing is a lot of brokers did not want to report those incidents of fraud because they're afraid of losing their shipper because they maybe had a bad taste in their mouth that they didn't know how to handle their business.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good question and a really good point. We're obviously talking about the regulation isn't necessarily there, the enforcement isn't necessarily there, but for these brokers who end up getting caught in a fraudulent situation, maybe they hire a carrier and the carrier goes out and has a tragic accident, where we've seen 2 cases of broker carrier liability be either decided or pushed up to a higher court level just as of this week. The amount of repercussions and the amount of, I guess, ambiguity that lives around these repercussions and who's responsible for what is part of the big problem I think that exists with this too, right? Is that if you end up, as an individual broker and your load gets double brokered, it sucks to go to your boss and be like, hey, this happened, I'm going to lose money, I'm going to get in trouble, what have you. From a broader standpoint, corporate accountability isn't there. And then you have criminal possibilities if you're talking about broker carrier liability, manslaughter charges, things like that. Is that a big detractor for folks from maybe even, the broker community, maybe even the shipper community who doesn't want to necessarily feel guilty involvement with these types of things? That's why we don't see a bigger push from other industry partners?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. One thing is that a lot of brokers have a gambling problem. They'll look at our system and say, hey, they got a red X, but this guy's $300 less. He may or may not do something bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to go all in. Or it's Friday afternoon, I want to get out of here, right? So that's an issue. A lot of shippers say, hey, I hired a broker for a reason. That's your problem.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, I'm not going to deal with it. You take care of it, or I'll find another guy that called me. I'm getting calls all day long from people that want my business. So I'll get somebody else. The other problem, I think, when you talk about the manslaughter and the accidents, those things that happen, Back in May of 2011, an attorney, Hank Seaton, and a couple other guys with his firm were representing TINA, NASDAQ, AEMCA in a lawsuit against FMCSA that says, hey, this safety thing is out of whack. You need to come up with a red light, green light system that says unsatisfactory, fit to use, either way, one or the other, right? And so they settled out of court that says, okay, we're going to change that. It's going to be unsatisfactory means they're unsatisfactory. Anything else they're fit to use. They didn't do anything to start checking those carriers out since 2011, right? So we have right now on our highways, 97% of all the trucks on the highways, carriers on the highway, 97% are not rated.
Yeah.
Only 3% have unsatisfactory, conditional, or satisfactory. So not rated doesn't mean that you're safe. That means we don't know.
Right.
We don't know how you're going to act.
Right. If you have a bowl of M&Ms and you know that two of them are poison, one of them's good, and the other 97 or you don't know, you're not going to eat from that bowl.
So what have we done to brokers and shippers? They have to guess. They have to second guess what the FMCSA has done. Should I use this guy? Am I gambling? So then they get called into court by plaintiff counsel and saying, hey, you're responsible. You picked this guy and you knew what his safety score was. Well, they don't know what the safety score is. So I think that does maybe the FMCSA need to be a co-defendant in one of these nuclear verdicts or nuclear cases? Or at the very minimum, should they be charged with maybe a dereliction of duty, what they're doing? Because we need to get these people regulated. If I was an attorney, I can't just finish law school and go start practicing law. I need to pass the bar. I can't operate on somebody just for being a resident at a hospital for a while. Same with a truck driver. You should not have your authority until you are found to be safe.
So I have a follow-up because given the situation in the FMCSA, let's look at the solutions looking ahead. If I'm a congressman or I'm a legislator, I'm assuming my first thought would be let me throw a bunch of money at this and maybe this will help. Let me hire a bunch of people, or the FMCSA is, let's see if we can get these state safety agencies more resources. How do we kind of begin to untie this Gordian knot? And let's just say, in your opinion, what are some of the ways do you think that we can get some low-hanging fruits to try and see this meaningful change in addressing the health of what appears to be a very poisoned well in terms of safe carriers, compliant carriers, and even the quality of the drivers on the road?
Well, without spending very much money at all, we could start maybe enforcing the laws that are in place. Start there.
Yeah.
That doesn't cost a lot. They're already there. The second thing is, and I've said this for a long time now, I think if you want to stop fraud in the real near future or significantly reduce it, one is abide by the laws, put those guys out of business and out of service that aren't in compliance with the law. But the second thing is, if we issued a transportation workers identification credential to any owner of a company or 5% or more ownership of a company to have as a prerequisite to obtaining your authority, we know who they are. They have to come in person. They have to put their fingerprints down. They have to do a background check. All those things that 600,000 drivers are put through every single year to go to a port. If we did that for every owner of a trucking company to obtain or maintain their authority, the other thing is the TWIC expires after 5 years. So should your authority. You should have to renew it. Broker and carrier. Brokers don't get checked by FMCSA at all. Once they get their authority, they're in for as many years as they want to hang around. So I think that would help out tremendously. And we know who they are. You can't say you're in Pakistan or in Pittsburgh and be in Pakistan by getting a TWIC card. The other thing is when it comes to the money part, it costs about $125 to get a TWIC card. It costs the government approximately $65 to process it. There could be a profit deal here. Now we take that $65 times 60,000 applicants every year. We have some money for enforcement.
So let me talk a little bit about enforcement because it's been a big topic of contention with the latest rules coming down from the DOT, the English language proficiency. See, I can't even say it. That mandate has come down, and the question was always about enforcement. We're starting to see that kind of trickle down in some of the data. We talked about this on Wednesday's show, but there's that idea that you're having now more scrutiny placed on carriers just in general because of now this rule of English language. Is there an option or an opportunity now for the increased enforcement via the ELP mandate to start to expose things like this? Or do we think that the real, again, root cause of fraud, which ELP mandate or not, believer or not, full belief in the brokenness of the system being the English language barrier or not, whatever that is. But do you think that now, because we have an avenue for enforcement and closer scrutiny, that we'll start to see more of a pickup of some of these other nefarious activities that are going on?
Yeah, I think the Secretary of Defense, our Secretary of Transportation has done a good job on seeing what we're going to do going forward. I think there's going to be a lot of changes with the ELD enforcement. I think we're going to see less drivers on the road. But everything that we do, every change we make has consequences. And one of the consequences of the ELP, in my opinion, is there's a lot of guys now that can't speak the English language, so they can't operate a commercial motor vehicle. So we're seeing a trend now is switching to cargo vans and vehicles under 10,000 pounds, who are not commercial motor vehicles. They don't have hours of service regulations. There's no ELD connected to it. They don't have to speak English to drive a Sprinter van or a truck under 10,000 pounds. So, and, for the bad guy, well, 18 tires cost a lot more than 4. So, and they make just as much money because now they can, rather than driving 550 miles in a day, they can drive 1,000 miles a day, 1,500 miles in a day, because no one's regulating it. And I've written articles about this. I think that what difference does 1 pound make? 10,000 pounds to 10,001 makes you less or more safe on the road. And the other part is who's regulating those 10,000 pound trucks. There's no DOT number on the door. But once I put 1,000 pounds of hazmat in that truck, I'm a commercial motor vehicle. Once I go over 10,001 pounds, I'm a commercial motor vehicle. Is there any shipper that's watching that saying, hey, wait a second, you're a commercial motor vehicle? I think that 1 pound should not make a difference. If you're transferring freight across state lines, you need to have a DOT number on your door. You need to follow the same regulations, so we can maybe curb that before that becomes an issue.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as well to get your thoughts on that, because do you think I've spoken with a few people off the record, and one of the big concerns is there is also a national security risk when we're looking at fraudulent CDLs, and we're looking at the fact that you don't even need a CDL to do it. Do you think that if we're looking at avenues to get more attention, because it was explained to me for regulators, either Congress does it, the executive says to the FMCSA, look at it, or the FMCSA does it themselves, is there a national security risk? Because I can imagine, I have a feeling, and this is a spicy personal take, if a truck hauling hazardous materials combusts on a bridge, I don't think we would know if it was an act of terrorism or incompetence.
Yeah, right.
Who would you know?
And we don't know if that guy's got the proper insurance, because you look on Facebook or any social media, and we're hiring guys with, cargo vans that are 20 years old saying, you're going to run under our authority. You don't need, they try and do a lease agreement.
Yep.
We don't even know who's driving these trucks. Again, we have to get back to knowing with 100% certainty who's picking up the load, who owns the trucking company, all those kind of things. That's the part we're missing. ID is huge.
So it comes back down to it, which was the conclusion of, Thomas, all the work that you and I did on our CDL stories back in May, is that our system is broken overall. And it's one of those things where, chicken or the egg, do we fight this piece of fraud or do we fight this piece of fraud? Is it the post-accident analysis, or is it the pre-accident investigation that we really need to focus on? And those tangible action items are things that you mentioned, that's a group of 6 senators that formed that request for the Freight Fraud Task Force. One of them sits in the vice president's chair now. JD Vance was one of those authors of that Freight Fraud Task Force request. And you have folks who are in power, and granted, as the vice president of the United States, probably not one of his top line priorities, but we start to see a little bit of a shift in that prioritization of this. Thomas mentions it could be a national security risk. You have you have the fact of the matter that it is in fact in immediate danger to the American people to have unsafe folks on the roadways. What is that first tangible step that we take to start to fight it? Is it getting everybody on board with being in a system like FreightValidate? Is it sitting there and lobbying Congress, lobbying the lawmakers to say, hey, again, we have to put a little bit more enforcement to this? Like, what is that number one first step?
Yeah, anytime we lose a life on the highway, it becomes a vice president's problem. If he wrote that action that says, we want you to do something, Mr. OIG, and they didn't listen to him as a senator, he's got a hell of a lot more pull right now. Let's listen to him as the vice president.
And also a different OIG right now as well.
Right. New IG, so appointed by his administration.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. I think that we have to talk to our lawmakers and say, look, you need to talk to folks who sit on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. You need to talk to people who sit on the Transportation Committee in the Senate. You need to, if they aren't going to keep control of those agencies that they're in charge of, then maybe we need to vote them out. Because we have to start saving lives out here. And if it's a fraudulent act that caused the guy to be on the road in the first place, that was a misstep on the part of the agency that's there to protect us. That's what they're there for. And I think that maybe one of the answers when we talk about the TWIC card, we talk about how we make some changes, maybe the FMCSA's role should be safety. Maybe the Transportation Security Administration should take care of registration. They handle the TWIC card now. Let's put that over there. That's a national security thing. They're run by Homeland Security. Let's put that part over there to start protecting people on our highways.
I got a follow-up too. I wonder if we need to see from the Department of Justice, because it does appear to be maybe RICO investigations. It appears that if you have like 30 different motor carrier numbers and you get involved in a fatality and accident, do you think that's another avenue within the kind of bureaucratic apparatus to say, well, if the FMCSA only has 1,100 people, if the state DOT is catching it, can we get memorandums of understanding between these departments? Can we get an intergovernmental agency to streamline this and get the DOJ to prosecute? Because I'll give you an example. I spoke to a trucking association person who talked about one of their members. Their truck and trailer got stolen. They were based out of one state. It showed up in New York. They pulled over the driver. They found it because of telematics, and they didn't even pull the driver in for no CDL, couldn't speak the language of the road. They let him go. And so they were like, well, we recovered the trailer. Another large carrier told me that a law enforcement agency told them it was a civil matter when you're looking at a $50,000 trailer and a $250,000 tractor being sold. Do you think that's one of the other levers? Because it seems at the moment, even when fraud happens before the accident, before somebody dies, there's not really enough being done to actually prosecute and go after these people. I mean, I'd issue a letter of marque at this point. Get some, deputize someone to fight it like the Old West. What are some of your thoughts on maybe that enforcement lane, like kicking it up to the DOJ and getting some serious firepower on this compared to what we have now, which is a patchwork of call this one guy. They're calling Homeland Security, trying to get Homeland Security to help them out because no one knows where the buck stops.
Yeah, I think it's really ironic that when there's a load of $300,000 worth of copper stolen, it's a civil matter. But if someone steals your 1998 Honda Civic, that's grand theft auto. I mean, where do we draw the line? So I think that enforcement's got to happen. I think that people have got to start being put in prison. These are things that are killing people. So I think that that's a huge issue with the enforcement part and imposing civil penalties. I don't think it's a civil matter when a load's stolen. That's a criminal matter. I don't think it's a civil matter when someone lies on their application. That's a criminal matter because it's perjury. Those are things that are against the law. So I think that we need to start buckling down on really saying what it is. And we'll go back real quick to the making the reports. There is a National Consumer Complaint Database that the FMCSA says to call if there's a double broker. Have you ever looked at that form? It's about, hey, did you get ripped off on a lumper fee? Hey, did you see somebody driving safe down the road?
No.
There are thousands of reports that put into that black hole. And I think Secretary Duffy said that he's going to look into getting that fixed to have a real complaint place to go to. But there has to be a real place to do it. And I want to go back real quickly to the Freight Fraud Task Force. The FMCSA was asked OIG was asked to develop one. They didn't do that. I think there are enough people in our organization, and there's a couple of guys. Jeff Dickinson is one of the guys I helped co-found a Freight Fraud Task Force. I'm an advisor to it. I'm not a member of the board or anything, but they're starting to do it on their own. We got FreightWaves involved helping us do that with Adam Wingfield on the carrier side. So I think we're going to, until the government does something, we'll just do the work for them, and maybe they can adopt it and make it part of their process, but somebody's got to build it.
And you know what? If the last kind of 2.5, 3 months have shown us anything, the power of conversation around this is incredibly huge. And you have the folks where, we are a piece of commerce. We drive the American economy. Freight and transportation, if you break it down, it's what, 20-something% of the U.S. economy has to deal with freight, transportation, logistics. That's not a small amount at all when you break down the amount that we impact the economy, and it gives us a voice. And I think that that's the most powerful thing that we have amongst all of us is just that voice. So Dale, thank you so much for joining us on What the Truck. Let's throw it all back to FreightValidate, give you guys a little bit of a plug. People who want to, join this cause, get involved with you, make sure that the freight that they are hauling is in fact validated, starting it before they have to deal with an incident. Where can people go to do that?
Sure, they can go to our website. We have a free trial for 10 days. Check it out. It doesn't cost you a penny, no credit card or anything like that. That's at www.freightvalidate.com. You can catch me at info@freightvalidate.com. And I'm told if I'm not on LinkedIn every 15 or 20 minutes to call 911, something may happen to me. I don't know. That's just what I'm saying.
You know what? I love it. And we will definitely do that. Keep up with Dale, guys. Give him a follow on LinkedIn. Great stuff there. Great stuff from FreightValidate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thomas, let's wrap this up really quickly, talking a little bit about what's coming up here on FreightWaves, because you and I both, we're like your go-to de facto event hosts now, and we've got 2 events coming up for the end of July. Our next one is going to be a virtual summit. That's the Enterprise Fleet Summit. Your bread and butter as our enterprise fleet expert.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about it. Where can people go to find that?
Check it out, live.freightwaves.com or events.freightwaves.com. Sign up for it, register for it. We've actually got some really great folks, everyone from associations to Matt McClellan with Covenant, who I'm going to be sitting down with. And then later on, we have the AI Symposium coming up. We have the F3 event coming up in October. You don't want to miss that. Sign up and register. I'll be at the FreightWaves TV stage at F3. You'll be on the larger stage, but we have tons of stuff. Go to that website. Definitely check that out.
Hey, and some really exciting stuff coming down the pipe for potential and possibilities for FreightWaves TV. So make sure that you're staying tuned with us here on social. And we got some really exciting things. I can't quite tell you what it is yet because it's working through my brain right now. But I will say that it might involve a microphone, it might involve some stage and some lights, and it might involve you possibly having your very own show here on FreightWaves TV. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us through What the Truck this week. Have a great weekend. We will see you Monday, and don't be a stranger.